Welcome back to part 4 of Lance White and Andrew Bartzis. We're rediscovering our galactic history, and I do believe we left off with the audit that Prime Creator had established, and that was in
March 2013, the 20th to 22nd.
Okay, and so we can pick up from that.
So they tried to use CERN to fudge the numbers. Beings got ejected from the game. Think of it in soccer, you're getting a red card. They broke the most fundamental of rules, even though rules are broken here all the time. The most fundamental ones they broke.
Yeah.
They got ejected from the Galactic Ascension machine and do not get to be a part of the graduating timeline. This is both light and dark beings got ejected because they were both doing nefarious things to alter Prime Creator's will, because they had been experiencing the polarity of light and dark with no neutrality for so long that they had lost their own way. Okay?
Right.
So the light beings are ejected, the dark beings are ejected. At this point, Prime Creator used what's known as the walk-in rule. So those that got ejected, new souls were put into their bodies and took over all of their existing contracts and timeline functions that they did. So that's the first replacement of management system.
Wow.
The second layer of replacement management system is, after the timeout is over, new beings that are part of this contractual system of domination and control are going to be replaced with neutral beings who have no political objectives, no dogmas, no spiritual concept, that simply see the information, and the resolve is putting us as a species in a complete soul code.
Oh, great.
The Galactic Ascension machine has always been about taking the 2,300 species that have been warring over this planet and creating drama and make them into a single species, and when that's done, they go back out to those races and bring the DNA wisdom that they've all been trying to hoard for themselves.
Right. That makes sense.
That resulted. That's why they put all these planets here.
Yeah. Now, how many planets are here? And
66.
66. And why is it that we're told there are 12?
Because that's what the books are creating the reality for.
So,
as I said, there have been there's star watching societies out here. I mean, you look at some of the old Sumerian texts. They knew about Venus. They knew about Mars. They knew about them all.
Oh, yeah.
They didn't even know what colors they were, what water was on them or not. They did that because they could remote experience those planets as star watching societies.
Interesting. Now, what about this, the scientific group that's trying to create an event horizon where artificial intelligence overtakes human intelligence? That sounds like another faction of these warring interests.
It's a reemergence of what took Atlantis and Lemuria down. It's always been the technology that was passed from one generation to the next that created the failures of the society. The society isn't balanced between light, dark, and neutral.
Right.
There's an overwhelming amount of lower vibration people in domination and control that are using the technology given to them, that have enough free will to realize that they can become very powerful with the simplest of technologies, like time travel technology. I've been talking a lot about these time wars to understand that everything for the last 52 million years has literally been about 2011 to 2014. Absolutely everything.
Wow.
Okay, the air cities jumping through, it's always been about the point where, think of a record. You start on the outside and you go groove to groove to groove, and that's going around the galactic central sun. And when we get to the final part, the needle gets lifted up, the arm gets put back, and we start all over again. Okay?
Yeah.
The timeline wars. In the early 1900s, when Industrial Revolution really hit, is when the time travel factions began to co-opt the governments on the largest scale. You have a military budget, and that military budget has multiple projects underneath it. Those projects have black projects, deep black projects, so on and so forth. Time travel entities knew that this would happen, so they inserted organizations into the fundamental findings of these military organizations so that they could have budget to create black technology, even though the Congress and the Senate never knew that this technology was already working. So every decade they'd have somebody else that came from the future back into the old timeline, in the early 1900, 1920, 20, 30, 40, to make sure that the money was appropriated and the technology was available to send people forward and backwards in time on that graduating timeline, while still creating tens of thousands fake timelines to cover up what they were doing to get the money to do it now.
Wow. Wow, so how many well, have the timelines been collapsed at this point?
All the timelines are on, since June 2011, we're on a single timeline. Though we as the manifesting co-creating spirits can create new timelines. Think of it if you have an arm cut off. Okay?
Okay.
We still feel that arm, called ghost limb syndrome.
Yeah.
If you were born into a world that had 300,000 timelines, even though you were never aware of it,
Right.
and it's all of a sudden gone, it's still part of you,
Yeah.
and
yeah.
you can dream it back.
Ugh.
So that's what these vessels in our the sylphs, the cloud ships, they're here to stop us from creating these ghost timelines again.
Okay. Okay, that sounds interesting. So now, all these black budgets are still going on.
Correct. And
And-
there's a massive black side to money. And
Oh,
what
yeah,
we're going through right now, while the
Right.
stock market drops, they have to take money out of the black side and give it to the 3D matrix side and not disclose where it came from.
Right,
Okay.
right, right.
I've described this many times. This event will be like a Three Stooges show. It'll be the
Okay.
dress will go up and the underpants will be shown over and over again. It'll be slapstick how they're trying to cover it up.
Wow.
Okay.
So this is all coming. I
Yeah.
mean, we have yet to, you know.
We haven't yet to even experience the really humorous parts.
Right. It's all been pretty
Okay.
drudgy at this point, and pretty dense. But the funny part seems like they are just around the corner.
Yeah, and it'll be in waves,
Okay.
and then consciousness will relax. It's just like
Right.
waves of laughter that's come over and over again, and it'll come through unity consciousness.
Huh. Well, now, what happened with so the Pope just resigned, and there are all these prophecies about this Pope that's presently in office being the last one, that somehow they're just going to give up the ship. Is there any truth to the fall of the Vatican and the religions and the banking system? What's going on with that?
They have to be affected. The exchange for value monetary systems, when we had gold backing our system, the energy of consciousness for exchange for value was represented in the gold. So the gold held the consciousness of the exchange for value. When gold was removed and went to fiat money system, the consciousness reverted to numbers on paper, then numbers in a digital system, then numbers in a server, then a numbers into a mass exchange server, which just completed the hijacking of the exchange for value system till all of your energy is held on the servers that create fiat money out of nowhere.
Right.
And that's how they tax you of your energy completely, because they're in sole contract to them through the banking systems.
Right.
Now, I've created a banking revocation, contract revocation, a government revocation, and a media. When it comes to banking, they are based off of family crests that have been hijacked over the thousands of years. And those people have been in domination and control for so long, they've lost their free will. All they can do is follow orders. They're minions.
Wow.
Just minions.
Okay.
Now, when you're working at someone at the Rothschild level, the Queen level, they have free will to stay in domination and control. They don't have free will to break the contracts because they literally are the holders of those contracts representations here on Earth. So walk-ins would have to go in them and take over those contracts. Who are you going to get to do that? It has to be the best of the best of the best of the best.
Yeah.
The Galactic shock troops that are risking their own life to come in and do that.
So that's part of the plan that's coming up, is the walk-ins.
The
for-
walk-ins to take over the management system that's holding the contracts.
which is the Royals and the Rothschilds and the
Popes
Rockefellers
and the,
popes, right?
the cardinals.
And
Now
then the
for
Black Pope.
Okay,
And,
as for the direct question on the current pope, I don't believe he's anybody but who he was in Brazil. I believe that he, as a person, and from reading his Akashic record, is being given a free will choice to choose light or dark or gray. And he has a window of opportunity between now and the end of the year to make that choice and put real effects to change the concept of the church one step at a time. The church needs a reformation. Churches
Oh.
go through reformations all the time, and it's not the end of the church. The church in some way, shape, or form will survive because it has faithful people and good people in it.
right. That's
Okay?
right.
And then there are the ones that are just there for tradition. And the ones there for their tradition are transitory spirits anyway, not really in spirituality, but in the tradition. And as the church goes through its reformation, you'll take care of the pedophilia, you'll take care of the banking issues, you'll take care of the corruption within inside of it, the nepotism. Every government has it. And a religion at that level is a government. It isn't a religion.
Oh, absolutely.
The power will be returned to local parishes, and the local parish priests will once again serve their community in faith, not in service to a government organization that says it's this way or you're excommunicated.
Right, right. Now, what happens to all the secrets that the Vatican has kept for these?
That's the big thing.
I mean, there's a lot of...
There's whole libraries that were created propaganda-wise. So if they were ever forced to reveal, they could reveal the fake library, which means that they could come back into existence later, or the fake propaganda. The thing is, will that Pope release the real library? And where is the real library? It's actually out of phase of reality right now. Like much of the alien technology, the good guys, there's 5,283 separate spaces in Unity enforcing a quarantine here.
Okay.
Well, the technology that they've been trading human DNA or human people for is to create out-of-phase realities around defensive systems, around special structures, so that they can't be teleported away by the big ships. Like, a lot of the missile systems that we have have been completely inoperable. A lot of the TR-3B triangle ships have actually been removed. Just they go into the base and they're gone.
Wow.
Okay. A lot of the deep underground bases have been completely emptied out of all negative technologies.
Huh.
But they ultimately knew that would happen. So they
Okay.
created mass amounts of technological systems that keep the vital, you're held hostage because we have ending the world weaponry
Right.
here out of phase. And they can't find them.
Okay.
And the true Vatican library is out of phase. No one knows where it's at, except for the sole contract holding people in the Vatican.
Wow.
But there's other libraries. It's not just the Vatican. You see, that's another
okay.
psyop.
Right.
Chinese have one.
Russians.
Japanese have one. The Russians have one. The Australians have one. They all have one.
Okay.
And that's a Akashic record that's stored in crystal, that's in the neutral perspective, written by people of those times that were perceiving the future.
So the truth can be brought out.
Absolutely.
No matter who holds the books and hides them and has them out of sync and out of phase.
Correct.
Because the original Akashic records can't be destroyed.
No.
And
They can never be altered. They can be redacted, which there's a black line over them.
now, how does that occur?
A soul will purposely redact part of its Akashic records, so when the scanning system is looking at you in the birth process, it goes over those black lines because there's just weird data that it doesn't understand. It's an artificial intelligence, and that artificial intelligence makes a report and sends it to someone in the next layer and the next layer, and they have to determine. If they don't know what that really means, it just means something crazy was happening during the Akashic record at that time. So they just go on to the next because there's a lot of billions of people in here.
Right.
So they do it as a camouflage system.
Okay.
Other times it's done to people, so, example, you or somebody else, if a being were to block out part of it, it means it gains sovereign will over you. It's dominated you at one point, that you gave up your free will long enough for it to erase parts of you so that you can be stuck into a reincarnation process.
Right.
And that means when you die, you only spend a few hours in the astral world, get your life review, and then get kicked in the butt and you're back in. No chance to fix your contracts. No chance because that redaction is there.
Right, that makes sense. And so that's that's why so many people are just
Stuck.
Yes, we're absolutely stuck. And the incarnational process is pretty much run by artificial intelligence and...
The archons determine who gets to immigrate and who gets to become babies. That's the most important job that they do.
Okay.
They are the ones that determine if a high vibration soul gets in or not. There are backdoor ways into Earth, and I came in through a broken rules contract.
Okay.
I used their system of broken rules to be here. Beat them at their own game. Many others have figured out the backdoor way in.
Okay.
And this is where the archons in the 80s were really trying to take out the indigo and the crystal children. That's why we have autistic children. That's why we have vaccines that are taking children down. It's because there's a big hole that they're getting, and you got to start plugging it up somehow.
Now, where do the archons reside in terms of
The astral worlds.
In the astral worlds.
They
okay.
hold a court, and that court determines immigration status. That's essentially all that it does.
Now, they're not the natural inheritors of the incarnational process, which is supposed to be organic.
Which is supposed to be the Earth Mother's sentience.
Right. So
With air cities interacting in the North Pole in her dream time.
okay.
But there are no air cities up there anymore.
Huh. In the North Pole?
No. There's just Dreamtime realities that's part of Earth. They've limited Earth's consciousness by forcing low vibration souls in here for so long while it's been going through denser and denser. Earth has little choice but to allow that to happen. It has to have life on it, has to nurture life, even if it's low vibration. So they knew how a planet would grow and ascend and descend. They knew all of this, and they're using that to their best of advantage.
And how long have the Archons been affecting in the play? If this goes back 52 million years.
Well, 490,000 years ago is essentially when the Galactic Ascension Machine was set up so that they could resolve the 66 prime lines of drama.
Okay.
They came in about 385,000 years ago.
Okay.
And that's after the neutral guys were kicked out. They needed a system of entities that had the God mind but were still in control.
Oh.
That there was a sentience still in control of them, and the God mind inside those Archons would never know it. Many of the Archons were just high vibrational beings that were captured in other domination and control planets, taken to technological centers, had their bodies removed, their vibration rapidly raised with energy until they're experiencing the unity consciousness of an artificial intelligence that's telling them they're God. Then they're compacted into a little ball of energy and shot across space, smack into our astral realm, and are force incarnated.
Wow.
They then wake up at 2 years of age and say, I'm a god.
Wow.
And then they go out and become a god, and when they finally lose their physical body, they're brought into the astral world and they say, I'm a god. And then the system of domination and control puts them into the court system that allows them to stamp your immigration.
Wow.
And that's where they insert fine print into your contracts. To get into Earth, there's a line of people waiting, quite literally a line.
Okay.
And there's a council of 52 Archons over there that read your spiritual contracts and get to put fine print in there because they're looking at who you're looking for, your mother, your father, your daughters, who's your first grade teacher, who's your first love, who's your first divorce, who's your 11th divorce, so on.
Right.
And they're putting fine print in there to give you negative habit patterns so you never get into your mind and claim your sovereignty.
Right, so they're giving you patterns like addictions and the whole
Bad relationships, so on, the whole gamut.
dysfunctional parents, pedophilia, blah blah blah.
Yep.
Okay, are they? What's their level of sentience? I mean,
Most of them are in the fifth. I don't like using raw terms because they're not really accurate to our linguistics, not putting the work down. The linguistics that we function with is limited. We just can't explain in terms. But to relate for the other light workers community out there, of the 52 Archons that are overseeing the immigration court, the vast majority are in 4th density, 5th density, or 7th dimensional. They're pretty powerful. But they were forced to that level, and they can't stay there. So after a while, an Archon will literally fade out. It can't be in this reality anymore, and a new one will be brought in to replace it. So they do have a limit, a fuse.
Huh, interesting. And then they're below the 15, obviously.
Correct.
They've been running the show.
They're being
co-opted and manipulated.
They're being hive mind manipulated by them.
Okay.
Because they're the ones that gave them the God concept.
Yeah.
But even gods have a conscience.
Huh.
The little whisper in their voice, the whisper in their mind.
Huh. So are they considered, I mean, are there good Archons?
No, there are good Archons. There are ones that have switched sides.
Okay.
Many of them were taken out and not allowed into the immigration court, but they're the ones that revealed the back doors. They're the ones that said, I can't do this anymore.
Wow.
My homeworld was freed 1 million years ago and I can't get back to it.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
So they do. I mean, we have to forgive a lot of them. We really do.
Yeah.
There has to be forgiveness on a pretty grand scale. And then there were those that simply cannot be forgiven.
Like?
The 15 multidimensional beings.
Yes, thank you.
And some of their grand servants and their grand creators that they had underneath them. You know, dealing with those people is not going to be easy. When we come to the point where arresting
Mhm.
Is it really going to be arresting in a court system that's considered corrupt? No.
No, no, no.
It'll be on a spiritual court. And I call these spiritual courts of equity, where their entire history is read out loud in a neutral perspective for everyone to understand this being has done this. And then
Yeah.
everyone that listens said, oh my God, that one guy made sure that there were pedophilia rings for the last 5,000 years.
Right.
He will be taken in the spiritual court of equity and brought to the Galactic Central Sun for recyclement.
Now, is that a place where the second death occurs? In other
Yes.
words, you
Spiritual
are...
recyclement.
Yeah. Okay. So you can be undone. God, somebody that's been playing God for all those millions of years can be unmade and put back into source material. And that is the second death, and that's what they probably...
Fear.
Yes, that could happen.
And that fear is what's turning some of these Archon beings not fully dark, where they're starting to touch what I call the warrior of twilight status,
Huh.
where they're good, but still evil. And they're playing both sides,
Yeah.
and their whole purpose of playing both sides is they know the light is deep into polarity and the dark is deep into polarity,
Yeah.
and if they keep playing them, more and more of them will get turned into walk-ins.
Is that something that they want to have?
Yeah, because they want off.
They
this
want
world.
out.
They want out.
Right?
They want
They're
out.
probably bored with the whole thing too.
Well, more than just bored, stuck.
Stuck, yes.
Stuck.
Where everyone is stuck.
Stuck.
Everyone is literally stuck.
Stuck.
Yeah.
No graduating classes.
Yeah. Wow. So this should be the largest graduating class of ever,
Correct.
since it hasn't happened for so long, and there's so much. I mean, it is like the end of the cycles.
Yeah. And then the backlog of spirits waiting to get here and complete soul family before we graduate.
Ah, right.
That's the other part of it.
Oh.
So
Oh.
back to timeline wars.
Okay.
Atlantis and Lemuria. We didn't finish full on Lemuria.
That's right,
Just
that's
real
right.
quick, Lemuria started jumping timelines. Well, the thing is, the last fall of Lemuria is where Lemuria and Atlantis began fighting each other and never realizing they were the same species. Okay.
Wow.
So when Lemuria fell its last time, they tried bringing their population into the future. And that's where the Lemuria-Atlantis war starts, because they literally took a continent outside of time and put it back down on the planet in another part of the timeline, because they can do that.
Wow.
The continent's completely shifted around. It's not inches a year.
Yeah.
It's instantaneous. I want it here, and the world reality just adjusts around it,
Right.
because they're in charge of the grid, the energy grid, and they can just allow that reality creation to happen. Well, Atlantis didn't like all of a sudden a new continent came in out of nowhere. Well, they're stuck in timeline wars,
Right.
and they began to butt heads politically, socially, spiritually, technologically. And those wars were really limited, and they weren't really wars as much as they were chess butting.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. All right.
The Lemurian people that came through rapidly became integrated with the Atlantean society at a point where Atlantis was reaching its political peak. Now remember, spiritual invasion brings corruption, low-density people into this political process, into the science and technological process, so it never fully reaches its peak.
Right.
You have a mass influx of high-energy people that allowed it to get to its peak and changed the breeding patterns. That basically the dark guys all of a sudden were 500% behind their goal, because you just brought in 52 million people, or 52 billion people, or 100 billion people, because that's what they could do.
Oh.
But many of them, as soon as they came in, they interbreeded with the Atlanteans and then just left, went to other worlds. Because Earth is a migrate to and migrate from. It was all about saving the most amount of people from the experience of domination and control of the falls. The societies knew they were going to fall. The political structure knew. And were they really keeping it a secret? Sort of. The people knew, but
Yeah.
you still had to have hope. You still had to have hope that it could be resolved. And then there were too many people that knew and created unity consciousness drives and teleportation system and time travel devices for the air cities, so the air cities could jump in the future, reseed Earth again with Lemurian high energy people that could counteract the breeding patterns of the negative force incarnations.
Okay. But you said that the air cities don't exist
Now,
now.
they're banned from being in the North Pole.
Okay.
Part of when Atlantis began to rise, fall, 3 rise, 3 falls.
Wow.
Well, it's the same pattern as Lemuria,
Right.
because you went through another dense part of space, light part of space, dense part of space,
Right.
light part of space.
Right.
As Atlantis reached its peak, its consciousness of its world was really about stopping these wars of invasion.
Mm.
You had all you can stands, you can't stand anymore, you're eating their spinach, and they're going to go out and kick butt and take names. And that's what they did on their first rise. Well, what happens when you kick butt and take names 1,000 years later? You get some mad people coming back.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just brought a mass migration of attackers back at them.
Right. Right.
Okay,
Right.
this puts Atlantis in a tough situation. It had a mass investment of people from Lemuria, and then a mass migration to there because the Lemurian people that were outside of time completed soul codes to other migration groups that had been missing for millions of years.
Mm.
So all of a sudden they're back in this matrix, and a whole big flock of people migrate here.
Mm.
That big flock of people, what we call refugees, worlds that were destroyed by domination and control or used up and said, we don't need this anymore, we're going to go on to the next one. Refugees came here. These refugees were in the worst healing states. They
Mhm.
needed healers. The Lemurians interbred with the Atlanteans to create healers. The Arcturians and the Orions and the Pleiadians came here to be healers because they needed billions of healers.
Wow.
They didn't need tens of thousands, they needed billions.
Whew.
Okay, and this is what brought the galactic commerce of healers being shared among worlds.
Oh.
So that peak of Atlantis. As Atlantis went through its first destruction, this was truly about reality control on the timeline level. The multidimensional beings were able to bring in a planet-killing asteroid out of nowhere before any unity consciousness could defend it, killing off the technology, causing the destructions of the cities, deaths of billions. Well, there's still millions and billions of people migrating here, so they just picked up the broken pieces and rebuilt the society really fast. But that's what these beings wanted.
Oh.
It got them trapped. And they knew there was another migration, another migration, and another migration, all behind those space timelines apart.
Mhm.
So they would plan these destructions coinciding with the arrival of the new migrations.
Ah. And so that explains the various metaphors and stories about the various falls and the water, the
Right.
destruction by water, fire, blah blah blah.
And that destruction is post-traumatic stress on your soul.
Oh, yes.
PTSD on your soul. So when they start mass propaganding the destruction of Atlantis, the destruction, the flood, Noah's flood, blah, 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 it's to make you back into that soul fear
Yeah.
that you had because you were here during a destruction,
Yeah.
so that you would create that destruction.
Right, right. Wow. Well, we're going to take a short break again, and when we come back, we will pick up wherever...
Atlantis.
Atlantis, exactly.
I'll get into some of the capital cities and the creation of the Hollow Earth and the Garthan networks.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful,
Okay.
because I wanted to ask you about that.
Okay.
All right, stay tuned.